Mr. Musk took over the Twitter with his freedom of speech absolutism, we are the protectors of freedom of speech as well. But at the same time, we cannot accept, for instance, the illegal content online and so on. So our message was clear: we have the rules which have to be complied with, and otherwise there will be sanctions. Well, we need the people who understand the language and the case law in the country, because what qualifies as hate speech, as illegal hate speech, which you will have soon also in the US. I think that we have a strong reason why we have this in the criminal law.
Well, the World Economic Forum's yearly meeting has come to an end, and the world's wealthy corporate elites and government leaders are heading back home to continue strategizing about how best to fight climate change. Never mind the 150-plus private jets they took to the conference in Davos. As we discussed last week, one of the central themes of this year's conference, in addition to climate change, was the supposed crisis of online disinformation, the failure of social media platforms to restrict false information and prevent the gullible masses from consuming it, was held up as the central problem for our times. Because how else can the authorities at Davos figure out how to move us around like chess pieces if we keep doing unexpected things because we're reading sources of information they don't approve of, that clash with their preferred priorities and preferences? World Economic Forum leaders are fully committed to fighting the war in Ukraine for as long as it takes, and they can't have the people getting too upset about the food shortages and energy prices that are resulting from it. Former CNN anchor Brian Stelter hemmed a panel on disinformation in which a U.S. Democratic politician and the publisher of the New York Times discussed how best to weigh the trade-offs between your right to free speech and their need to shut you up. But it was the remarks by another panelist that most captured the Internet's attention. This remark by European Commission member Vera Jourova went viral. Let's watch.
Well, we need the people who understand the language and the case law in the country, because what qualifies as hate speech, as illegal hate speech, which you will have soon also in the US. I think that we have a strong reason why we have this in the criminal law.
In that clip, Jourova announces that she believes European-style hate speech laws, which criminalize transgressive and offensive political statements, will be coming to the U.S. Jourova is the European Union's Commissioner for Values and Transparency. You have to admit she's being fairly transparent about her values there. More recently, she also had this to say on the subject of Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter.
After Mr. Musk took over the Twitter with his freedom of speech absolutism, we are the protectors of freedom of speech as well. But at the same time, we cannot accept, for instance, the illegal content online and so on. So our message was clear: we have the rules which have to be complied with, and otherwise there will be sanctions.
Follow the rules or face the sanctions. That's the EU's message for Elon Musk. She also said the time of the Wild West is over and that social media companies must behave themselves so as not to cause harm. We know what the Davos authorities mean by harm. They mean scrutiny of Western governments' COVID policies. They mean open criticism of China's communist authoritarians and questions about whether China's lax lab safety protocols were responsible for the entire pandemic. They mean vocal opposition to the war in Ukraine. Any challenge to the resolve that they believe all democratic nations must show. In other words, they mean dissent. Thankfully, the U.S. is not part of the European Union, and we have a little thing called the First Amendment that ostensibly prohibits the federal government from censoring our words just because they might be provocative or controversial or not entirely agreed upon. Our federal government wishes, of course, that it had broad power to control our speech. Federal bureaucrats' constant pressuring of social media companies to moderate content is a worrisome example and shows how our government will always try to get around the First Amendment.